Hello, hello. We are going to talk about watercolor painting today. If you've never done it, or maybe you already have done it, we're just going to go over the proper way to do watercolor and how to keep our brushes and our tables and our paints clean. And then I'm also going to show you a couple techniques how to get the best painting you can. So to start out with, everyone should have a tray. And on your tray, you should have brushes. And every person is going to need a dark blue brush, which is a round tipped brush, and the bright blue brush, which is a flat tipped brush. So everyone needs two brushes, an eyedropper with water in it, and a palette. This is what we're going to start out with, and then hopefully your teacher gave you paper towel, and every person or every other person has a little cup of water and a sheet of paper. So that's what we need to get started with. For watercolors, it is especially important to treat everything with respect. Respect the paint, respect the table, respect your neighbors. So please don't get up, don't bump the table, don't be walking around with paints or paintbrushes. Just stay at your desk, and if you need help or have a question, the best thing is to just raise your hand. If you do accidentally tip something over or make a mess, just raise your hand and ask for more paper towel and ask for help cleaning it up. But please just stay in your seat. So the first thing you might notice is that your watercolor paints are not paint right now. They're hard. These are called cakes. They need water in order to become paint. So what we need, that's why we have these little eyedroppers. We need the eyedroppers, the water, to activate the paint. So take the cover off. What we're going to do is we're going to put the cover back in the tray in the little bin so that they don't roll onto the floor and get lost. Now we need to activate the paint. We're not going to put drops in every single color, only the colors that we need. We can easily add more water if we decide we need a color. I'm going to start out with purple. I'm going to get nice and close here. We only need a couple drops. Hold it right over and put a little squirt, about 5 or 6 drops. And now you can see my paint is wet and I can start painting. The flat brush is for when we're painting big areas, and the round brush is for when we're painting little lines or details. So I'm going to be using my big flat brush for right now. Another important thing about painting is brushes. I want everyone to do this. Tickle your hand. The metal part of your brush should never touch your paper, only the bristles. We just want to tickle the paper. If you are pressing too hard and the metal is touching the paper, then your brush is going to get very sad after a while. It never wants to be flat. It just wants to tickle. So please remember that. So we're ready to paint. Our paint is wet. We have a brush. I'm going to dip it into my paint, and now I can start painting. When I first touch the color to the paper, it's going to be very dark. I can take my brush and I can move that paint around. And the longer I paint, the lighter it's going to get as I move that color around. And the other fun thing about watercolor paint is you can change how dark it is. Now, you can see I'm painting, but no paint is coming anymore. I've spread that watercolor out, and nothing's happening anymore. I don't want to push harder because I just want to tickle the paper. So what I should do, because I'm no longer painting, is now I need to dip it back into the paint. And now we're painting again. So you can already see I made that stripe darker and that one lighter just because I spread it out more. So that is how we can change how dark and how light the paint is. Another thing we can do is how much water we add to the paint. If we add a lot of water, it's going to be lighter. If we add only a few drops of water, it's going to be darker. Now let's say I put this down and I go, ooh, I want it lighter than that. Here are two tricks you can do. Using your eyedropper, you can actually put a drop of water right onto your paint, and that is going to make it spread out more and be watery. Or you could put a drop on your paintbrush, just one little drop. There we go. And look at that. The tiny little bit of paint that was left on my brush is now painting. And see how light that purple is? Okay, so that's how we got different shades, different values, lights and darks. It's called value. Different values of one color. Now I'm ready to move on to a different color, but my brush has purple on it. So this is the most important part. You're going to take your water. This is going to be your dirty water. Take your brush, swirl, and then swipe. Swipe this side, turn my brush over, and swipe the other side. And hopefully you'll see some big, fat water droplets coming down the edge there. And now your brush should be clean. We're going to double check it now on our paper towel. So I'm going to swipe on my paper towel. Ooh, a little bit of purple came off. And so I'm going to keep swiping until my brush is nice and dry and nice and clean. If a lot of color is coming off, you might want to swirl and swipe one more time and then blot. So every time you're switching colors, swirl, swipe, blot on the paper towel. Now we're ready to move on. I am going to activate some orange and now paint with orange. Another tricky thing about watercolor paint is that when you already have a color here and it's wet, painting right up next to a wet color doesn't always work, because then we can get some what's called bleeding, where the purple and now my orange could mix together. And sometimes we want that, and sometimes, usually, we don't. So if I'm painting, I want to leave a little space, or I want to work on a totally different part of my paper until I know this is good and dry. And I think this is actually pretty good and dry. But I'm going to leave that orange a little wet, and I'm going to show you what could happen. So you can see I got like a drip there on my orange, and I'm going to take my purple, and I'm going to go right up next to it. And that orange, oh yeah, see? Look at the purple started bleeding into the orange. I didn't even go on top of the orange. It's just because they're wet. That's called bleeding. And that is not usually what we want to happen. If we're painting maybe an orange fish in blue water, we don't want the blue to mix with the orange. So that's why when you're painting, paint up here for a while, paint down here for a while until we know it's dry, and then go back. Otherwise, we're going to get bleeding. But sometimes we do like bleeding to happen. If I was painting maybe a sunset and I wanted that to happen, then I could go in here and I could actually mix the colors together a little bit. And then those colors would be blended like a sunset would be blended together. I'm going to show you a little example of that. A student of mine painted this fish, and you can see all those colors that are blended together. So the fish was, the blue was very wet, and then she went back and added the yellow and the orange and the red and a little purple, and the colors just like blended and bled together while she was painting. So sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's a bad thing. So just keep that in mind. If the paint is wet and you don't want that to happen to your colors, then paint somewhere else for a while. So after we're finished, one more thing actually. I'm going to show you one more little trick. So if we're painting and, oh no, that's way too dark. I did not want it to be that dark of a purple. You can take your paper towel and you can press down and blot the purple, and it will take some of that color up. You can actually even spread the color out with your paper towel a little bit, okay, and to create kind of a different look. And I can go back with a wet paintbrush and spread that color out. So just some tips for if it got too dark. But there you go. Light colors blend really well together. I can show you that quick a minute too. I'll do yellow. So yellow is especially tricky when we want a clean paintbrush, because yellow shows any color that was on our brush, and it's the first one to get all muddy and dirty. So I'm going to be as quick as I can. I'm going to get my yellow on there, clean my brush really good, and now I'm going to go to orange, and I'm going to go right like on top here and make a blend. And yellow is really light. So I can do that again, clean my brush, and mix my colors together. And I just mixed, so now I have yellow, kind of a yellowy orange, and then orange. But you always want to clean your brush in between doing that. So, blending and mixing colors, getting colors lighter and darker, and always, always, always keeping your brush clean. So now when you're all finished painting, you have your dirty water. Hopefully your teacher has a bucket you can pour your water into. Find your cap, put your cap back on your eyedropper, and we want to keep this paint super duper flat. If we tip it at all, that's when drips can happen, and drips could go into other paint colors and it just becomes a mess. So we want to keep this as flat as possible. Either leave it on your desk, listen to whatever your teacher tells you, or we can just close it and still always leaving it very flat. Put it back inside the tray. Leave your brushes out so that they can get a good cleaning before they go back in the tray. And that is watercolor paint. I hope you have fun.